Dr. Simon Kher, a university professor of paranormal psychology, made his way to the old apartment complex as he had done 100 times before. He was average height and a little overweight. His silver hair and silver-trimmed beard revealed his age to be middle to late 50s. He wore blue jeans, a white button-down shirt, and a sports jacket. He had been studying the paranormal activity of this haunted apartment for almost a year now. He knew there was a paranormal presence and had been working fruitlessly to obtain undeniable evidence. At first, the activity was very minor and sparse. However, the more he sought it, the more it had grown. His investigatory tools ranged from incessant questioning of the spirits in electronic voice phenomenon, sessions, to seances using a spirit board to communicate. Every time he came to this apartment, he felt less at ease. Regardless, he couldn't stop himself from coming back, so much so that he rented the apartment to resume his studies indefinitely. It started with a study session a week and slowly became an obsession. For the last few months, Dr. Kher had frequented the apartment daily. On this particular visit, the professor brought his friend Carla, a psychic medium. She was a former student of his and was currently studying to get her master's in forensic psychology. Carla had been a sensitive her entire life. She worked as a medium and made just enough to support herself through college. She was in her early 20s. Carla was an above-average-looking woman with medium-length blonde hair, fair skin, and a feminine build. She was dressed professionally in a white button blouse and a medium-length navy blue skirt. Recently, Carla had worked a lot with Dr. Kher. She did baseline readings of his study sites, potential paranormal site walkthroughs, and follow-up visits to measure changes or patterns. This was her third visit to apartment 404.
Professor, are you okay?
She gently touched his shoulder.
Yes, of course. Just lost in thought for a moment. Please come in,
replied Dr. Kher as he finally unlocked the door and hurried inside. Carla followed him inside and closed the door behind her. As she looked around the room, she noticed the addition of temporary furniture since the last time she was there.
Are you spending a little more time here, Professor?
She asked in a somewhat sarcastic tone.
Oh yes, I have been spending some nights here. I find better evidence when I am here with the cameras at night. So, do you feel anything different so far, Carla?
He asked quickly, changing the subject. She concentrated on the spiritual energy around her.
Yes, I can already feel several presences, and they are stronger than on my last visit. Are you ready to get started?
I need to change out some memory cards and do a few other things first. Can I get you anything to drink?
A water would be great,
Carla replied as she made her way through the small apartment. She headed to the cheap card table and folding chairs where the apartment's dining area would normally be. Scanning the small one-room apartment, she noted how the place resembled an apartment of either a poor college student or a recently divorced old man who did not know how or care to furnish his living space. The apartment was small enough one could cook, eat, watch television, and use the bathroom with only a few steps around the apartment. The professor grabbed the bottled water out of a cupboard with only a few steps and brought it to her with only a few more. He then went about changing the memory cards from the digital cameras scattered throughout the apartment. His laptop was already set up on the card table. It was complete with a memory card reader and various cables to other research devices. Dr. Kher then went into the bedroom and began to search through some clothes on an air mattress. Suddenly, the apartment's residual energy began to creep into Carla's mind.
Wow, the energy has really grown since my last visit,
She shouted to the professor. Her psychic barrier was already being tested. Removing her guardian charm, a carved wooden unicorn, from her purse, she then took her attention away from her surroundings and looked into her inner self. She began reinforcing her psychic barrier with devoted thoughts of spiritual protection. She used her charm as the conduit. She focused on a barrier around her and the table. By the light of her personal guardian, she demanded no spirits intrude on her space. Regardless of whether Dr. Kher was ready or not, this thing was getting started. Her consciousness was now 3/4 in the spiritual realm and 1/4 in the physical realm. This was just enough for her to communicate and answer questions in the physical realm and still remain somewhat aware of her surroundings. Most of her focus, though, was in the parallel spiritual dimension. It took the majority of her attention to see and interact there. The overwhelming energy was of anger and chaos. Disembodied voices shouted in English and several different languages. This apartment had been witness to a lot of domestic violence, and the energy had been anchored so securely that it oozed into the physical world. The image of a disheveled man formed and began to scream at her from just beyond the table.
This crappy chicken dinner again? The same damn crap you make every night! You call this full...
Raw rage filled the spirit's eyes. Carla knew this was just residual energy, a spiritual stain, so she focused on the shadows scurrying around the room instead. Her remaining physical senses detected Dr. Kher rushing from the bedroom to a camera aimed at the table. He rapidly adjusted the camera angle and checked the display before taking a seat in front of his laptop. He adjusted his sport coat, cleared his throat, and began the interview session.
Carla, psychic medium, July 26, 2014.
The professor faced Carla with the camera angled to view their profile.
Carla, I am assuming because you got started sooner than intended, there is currently a lot of paranormal energy present. Is this correct?
Carla was deeply focused in the spiritual world, and she nodded in confirmation before answering.
That is correct, Professor. I am sensing the usual anger and violent residual energy, but magnified in intensity and frequency. There are several shadow figures around us, and I am trying to focus on them.
The professor fidgeted in his seat uncomfortably.
My back feels a chill. I'm going to take temperature readings around us.
Dr. Kher pulled out an infrared thermometer gun and measured the vicinity of the table and then directly behind him.
I have an 8-degree drop in temperature near my back compared to the table. Carla, what are you seeing?
I am tuning out the ambient energies and focusing on the shadow figure standing behind you. It is hovering behind you, but staying outside of my protection.
Carla hesitated and was visibly shaken.
It is pure evil and powerful. I think it might be a different entity than we previously encountered. It is struggling to break through my barrier. 4 smaller shadow figures are now moving in to surround us.
Carla visibly struggled to maintain her focus.
Guardian of light, protect us. Keep us in your warm light, and protect us from the shadows.
I have another temperature drop. 4 degrees. No, 11 degrees. The temperature is 23 degrees Fahrenheit below baseline.
The professor exclaimed. He directed his attention toward the surrounding area.
Show me a sign of your presence,
he commanded. Even before he finished the command, Carla's water bottle that was sitting on the table flew into the air, over his shoulder, and toward the kitchen. It slammed into a cupboard with a violent crash.
Professor, please give me a minute to focus. This entity is very strong, and I am starting to have difficulty keeping it at bay. Please do not incite it.
Carla's voice was starting to show concern. Dr. Kher nodded in acknowledgement. He was excited to capture new evidence, but the presentation shook him a little. Carla resumed her struggle, and an eerie quiet encompassed the room. The professor waited patiently for her to reassume control. He looked at the cupboard with water dripping down the surface, and then he scanned the rest of the apartment nervously for any other activity. As he was sitting in the silence, Dr. Kher heard activity coming from the hallway. It sounded like the apartment manager talking with someone. A cursory look around the now quiet and still apartment revealed no current activity other than the continuing drop in temperature. He returned his attention to Carla. She sat quietly as she concentrated on the parallel spirit world. The professor admired her young beauty. She was an attractive young woman with her well-brushed blonde hair, smooth skin, and natural feminine curves. Even more attractive to him, however, were her sharp intelligence and supernatural ability to see the parallel spirit dimension. Very few had her psychic gift of sight, and fewer still to the extent of her abilities. His admiration was cut short when suddenly the table began to violently shake. His first thought was to grab the laptop off the table. Just as he pulled the laptop away, the weak card table snapped in half from a tremendous unseen force. Looking up at Carla, he saw her with her back arched in her folding chair. It was as if something was pushing her back by her neck. She was struggling for breath, and her face was twisted in horror. Dr. Kher dropped his laptop to the floor and tried to move to help her. He felt a heaviness in his legs, however, that prevented him from getting to her. He looked down, but nothing was there. It was as if he was in a bad dream where mobility was severely limited. All he could do was watch in horror as his friend and colleague was getting choked to death. As quickly as the chaos set upon them, it suddenly ceased. Dr. Kher fell back into his chair and Carla slumped in hers. She gasped for breath and rubbed her neck. Carla was absolutely terrified and sprang from her chair. She was still in shock and hesitant about whether to grab her things or just run out of the apartment. She picked the ladder and bolted for the door. A man-sized red claw mark adorned Carla's fair-skinned neck. It was complete with puncture marks at the tips where sharp claws would have been. Dr. Kher grabbed her purse from off the floor and chased after her.
Carla, wait, are you okay?
He exclaimed. Meeting her in the apartment complex's hallway, he handed her purse over and put a hand on her shoulder. Carla nodded, but was still working through her emotions. This was the first time she had been attacked to this extent, but because of her gifts, she had been around the paranormal her entire life.
Let me get a photo with a mark on your neck. This is unbelievable evidence.
The professor pulled his phone from his pocket. He then snapped a couple photos of the red claw mark. Carla was overwhelmed with emotion and tears streaked across her face. However, she leaned her head back to help with the shot. She was still reeling from her experience, but she was a professional and wanted to help document the evidence. He put his phone away and redirected his attention to Carla.
What happened in there?
He asked as soothingly as he could. He fought back the thrill and excitement.
I have to talk to you about it later. I need to go now.
Carla began down the hall and gathered her composure as she went.
How about lunch tomorrow on campus?
Carla shouted as she continued down the hall and toward the elevator. She was fidgeting with her purse.
Yes, that sounds good. Have a good evening, Carla. Call me if you want to talk before then.
Dr. Kher shouted back and waved goodbye. Returning to the apartment, he closed the door behind him, and he took a moment to look around the room. Like a young child on Christmas morning, the professor had a wide smile across his face. That had been by far the most paranormal activity he had ever witnessed in his life. In the last hour, he had gained more evidence than he had been able to gather in the last several years of his studies. He then pulled out his phone and reviewed the claw mark photographs as if they might have spontaneously disappeared. He wondered whether his other devices had captured all the evidence he had witnessed. The photographs were indeed still on his phone and by now in cyberspace and backed up within his cloud storage. He at least had one solid piece of evidence to show for his work. Now it was time to review the other evidence and see if he had captured digitally what he had just experienced in real time. Swapping out his phone with the digital camera from his briefcase, Dr. Kher began taking photographs of the aftermath. He captured the water stain on the cupboard that was already mostly dry and the water bottle emptied of most of its contents. When taking a photograph of the broken card table, he noticed what faintly resembled a footprint at the apparent impact site. In the center of the broken table, and in line with the fold, was what appeared to be 3 puncture marks at the tip of a 3-toed footprint. The professor took about a dozen shots of the potential footprint for further analysis. After taking several more shots around the room, he then began to collect his session data. The interview camera was knocked over on its side. It had probably been knocked over when the table was destroyed. He set the camera back up and checked to see if it was still working. Content there was no damage. He swapped out the memory card labeled C1S with another one marked C1. The memory card was reused from other surveillances after sorting through and saving any interesting footage. While swapping out the other memory cards, as he had done routinely, his mind began to wander. He had spent the last several nights in this apartment, leaving his empty nester wife at home alone. A strong sense of guilt seeped into his mind, and he regretted not being home very much the last several weeks. He considered, no, the last several months was more correct.
Damn. I am so sorry, honey. What have I been thinking?
He thought to himself. While swapping out the last memory card, the door to the vacant apartment next door slammed shut. The sound snapped him out of his thoughts. He could barely make out the apartment manager's voice in the hallway, as well as another man's voice. The professor thought the man was probably a potential tenant checking out the vacant apartment next door. Apartment 406 had been vacant due to strange occurrences, according to what he had heard from the apartment manager. Apartment 404 had more reported activity, so he had decided to center his research there. Anything next door was likely from excessive energy originating from apartment 404. After the last of the camera memory cards was collected, he began to organize them in his briefcase for later review. Fortunately, he did not have any classes tomorrow, so he could review the data soon. With only a few things left to do, he figured he would be able to make it home at a decent time for the first time in a long while. Speeding up his pace, he transferred the data from the temperature and sound recording devices to his laptop by way of USB.
I have a lot of work to do tomorrow.
Dr. Kher said to himself. He made the data transfers and packed away his laptop. While packing away his camera and notebook, he noticed Carla's carved wooden guardian figurine. Her guardian charm and notebook had been left behind when she fled the apartment. He gathered them up to bring to her the following day, and he put them in his briefcase. He then changed his shirt and tossed the old one into a pile of other dirty clothes on the air mattress.
What a mess,
he exclaimed as he buttoned up his sports jacket. Grabbing his briefcase and making his way to the door, he gave a final look around the room. The apartment was quiet and peaceful without its usual nervous energy looming. The room seemed to have a different feel, but that did not make any sense. After what had just taken place, he should be terrified of the place. Did the energy expend itself while being hyperactive? Did Carla cleanse the area while defending herself? This went against what he had experienced in the past. He hoped reviewing the data and evidence, as well as getting more details from Carla, would clear some things up. In the meantime, he had some making up to do with his wife, and a good start would be getting home before 6:30. Dr. Kher made his way out of the apartment building. He had had quite enough excitement for one day. And this concludes the first chapter. Like and subscribe to watch the next chapters as they are released and to help me continue my work. The book is also available on Amazon. Thank you for watching and have a great day!